Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 120, The Bonds of Friendship. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I'm author E.W. Barnes, and with me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're talking about the story told in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing good today. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And what's new in your writing world?
Not much new in my writing world. I was on a trip for a while over in Europe, in the Scandinavian and Nordic countries, which was quite awesome. But I didn't really get any writing done. Just, enjoying the local places, the scenery and the culture. So that was fun, just soaking that up. And then I was sick like a week and a half when I came back. So still didn't get any writing done. I just started feeling good in the last podcast that we did. I'm just getting back into things now. So unfortunately nothing writing wise in a while, but looking forward to getting back into it.
Good. Well, and it sounds like you've been refilling your creative well, and that's an important step.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I needed to do.
Good for you.
And how about your writing world?
My writing world is going well. I have finished Meridian, which is the third book in the Adventures of the Empyrean Guard series, which I'm going to release all at once when I get this series done. And I'm really hoping that happens in the next 6 months. Because I've been working on this series for a long time. I've got 2 more books to do, so I'm going to really push hard to get those last 2 books done. But I finished this third book, and so what's left now, of course, is the editing. And it's the hard editing. It's the look at every word editing and make sure it's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
While scribbling notes on the side, don't forget this, don't forget this, don't forget this, that kind of editing.
Yeah.
So, and that's intense. And, I find that I have to get up and move around. I have to do stuff because I can't sit in front of the computer for too long doing that. It starts to, bother my eyes, starts to bother, I can't sit. So, it's a process.
Okay. Well, congratulations on finishing that.
Thank you. Very excited about that. And then I'm really looking forward to moving on to the next 2 books. Yeah. Right. I'm really excited to get it done.
Are you going to fully edit this book before moving on to the others, or kind of a mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am going to do the really close, is every word exactly what I want edit before moving on to the next one. But I'm not going to do a final polish because, as we talked about, one of the reasons I have not been releasing this series as I've completed these stories is because I want to make sure that as a discovery writer, there are things I discover as I move along that I would like to then incorporate back into the first book so that it is fully woven in and doesn't appear for me sometimes as a reader when I'm reading a story, and this happens, and I get it. I understand that, and I don't in any way blame authors for this when they come up with new ideas as they're writing the story, because they are so immersed in their worlds, in their universes, that things are blossoming and growing right before their eyes as they're writing. But it does take me out of the story when I realize that's happened. And so I would like to try to not have that happen with this series, understanding that it's still going to happen. But that was my goal here, and one of the reasons why I didn't want to release it as I was completing the stories, and then have things that evolved in the universe not be reflected back in the original story.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I think it's a give and take, right? Because on the one hand, my fans, bless all of you, have been waiting an awful long time for these stories. And so is it worth it to them to wait so long so that there isn't actually world discontinuity? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the choice I made this time. Next series, I probably won't do this.
Okay. Yeah, I
Anyway.
definitely feel some of that with my Tales of Zara series. I
Yeah.
wrote the first book just intending that to be just a one-off story, and then as I finished it, I realized, "Oh, there's a lot more I can tell." So now that I'm
Yeah.
moving into it and making it more of a continuous story, I there's definitely things like, "Okay, I gotta make sure this works with what I did before, and yet still expands on the
Yeah.
universe." So it's a little trickier than if I had just plotted it all out at once, but I think it's working okay.
Yeah. And you know what? And a lot of authors do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's just truly nothing wrong with that. You see that all the time in great stories, in great universes. You can see where the author has grown the
Yeah.
universe, and that's okay. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a problem. It's just a choice that I have made.
Yeah. No, I think it can work either way.
Yeah. So, have you come across any interesting stories in books, movies, or television?
Let's see, I was watching an older show called Con Man with Alan Tudyk, where he plays an actor who's going to all these cons, right? These conventions, like comic book conventions and things like this. And the idea is that he worked on this popular science fiction space show, which is basically like what's the show that Serenity was based off the movie? I forget what it is now. But it's the same idea. It's like it's not exactly that, but it's basically the same concept that he was on this popular sci-fi show, but he wants to do more dramatic acting and different types of acting, so he kind of resents it a bit. But it's a comedy. It's like, it's kind of Galaxy Quest-ish in a way.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking of.
Yeah, it's kind of that feel to it. And Alan Tudyk is very funny, so it's a really good show. I enjoyed it.
Good.
What about you? Have you encountered anything cool?
Let's see. I am still reading the Stormlight Archive. This is a reread of book 3 as I move forward into book 4 so that I can actually read the brand new book 5. I'm wondering when book 6 is coming out. It's probably way too soon to ask that question. But let's see if there's an idea of when it might. Oh my gosh. Book 6 was, oh, that's just so painful. Okay. Is everybody sitting down? Based on Sanderson's current schedule, book 6 is estimated to be released around 2031.
What?
I know.
Well, maybe he does kind of a little wrap up of stuff so far. I
Maybe.
would hope so.
Yeah. Holy cow.
So he must be going to, like, other series and doing different things
Yeah, I'm sure he
'cause
is. He has
he's
got,
very prolific.
an entire
Yeah.
universe of stuff to choose from. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Then
Given that he's doing that, he probably has things in other series that are gonna connect into this one, I would guess.
yes, that's what he's got. That's this whole, as I understand it, this is all part of what's called the
Yeah.
Cosmere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so all these series connect together in this Cosmere. So that seems so far away.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I won't be starting that series anytime soon.
It's really good. It is really good. It's very enjoyable. It is very incredibly deep and detailed. I mean, it is a series that you really sink into and you stay in this world.
Yeah, but I'll
Yeah.
forget everything that happened by then.
And there's apparently short stories as well. I'm now in the Stormlight Archive wiki. And so there's a couple of short stories that I have not read. So perhaps I should look at those too and get the full series. But anyway, okay. Well, I'm going to not worry about that. And
Yeah.
I'm also going to not worry about reading this slowly because apparently I have time. As far as TV and movies, haven't really seen much. There's a bunch of things that are out that you and I have talked about, off microphone about what we want to look at for the podcast in the future, including the second season of Wednesday and the third season of Foundation. So I haven't watched any of Foundation. I saw the first episode of Wednesday. It looks like the quality is the same as far as season 2, so I'm excited about that. But then my offspring objected to watching Wednesday in August. Wednesday is supposed to be an October watch,
Yeah,
apparently.
it's a
So,
Halloween show, right?
yeah, I'm not sure I'll be continuing that due to the
Yeah.
objections of my offspring. And that's pretty much it. I will say that after I watched Star Trek 3 for the podcast, I went ahead and watched Star Trek 4 as well.
Oh, that's funny.
Are you ready to talk about Star Trek 3?
Yeah, let's talk Search for
All
Spock.
right. Today we're talking about the story told in the movie Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And I will read the synopsis that comes up when you type Star Trek III into Google. Admiral James T. Kirk has defeated his arch-enemy, but at great cost. His friend Spock has apparently been killed. The USS Enterprise is being scrapped, and starship physician Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy has taken ill. McCoy's odd behavior is evidence he's harboring Spock's Katra, or animating spirit, and Kirk seeks to take the Enterprise back to the Genesis planet and find his friend. Rebuffed, Kirk takes dramatic action that results in war with deadly Klingons. Did you enjoy this movie?
Yeah, I like this story. I think it's sort of a continuation from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Well, not sort of. It is a continuation of Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
And I think tonally it's kind of similar to that movie, which is notable because of the next movie that you said you watched after this one, which is very tonally different than these two. Much more comedy in that one compared to, the more serious nature of 2 and 3. But I think this one, for me, this one works as sort of continuing that story of what happened to Spock. It's both these movies, I think 2 and 3, they're less like sci-fi idea stories that we got in the original series, where you have a science fiction
Yeah.
idea and how does that affect society and what would that look like, and sort of morality and ethical tales. It's not really those. It's more about the characters and in these more extreme events, which is okay. I think that works on a movie scale, and I think we get cool callbacks from the original series, with Khan, and then in this one you've got Sarek and things like that. So for me, all that stuff worked pretty well. It did. One thing that struck me as kind of funny is I remember seeing someone said the original series kind of became like Spock's magical ability of the week, where Spock is super strong, Spock has an extra eyelid, Spock can do a nerve pinch, Spock can do a mind meld, and now here he can upload his consciousness into someone else's body and avoid death. It's just, like the concept for this story is kind of reminded me of that, so I thought that was pretty funny. But obviously the story is taken seriously, and I think it works pretty well overall. I do like how they brought Sarek back and connected it back to Vulcan and the sort of serious rituals that they have on Vulcan. I liked all that aspect of it. And I think it has some good character moments. I really liked seeing Bones admit that he missed Spock. Like, I thought that was
Yeah.
a great moment to have in a movie, considering the rocky relationship they had during this series. We just talked about the Tholian web, where they're kind of at each other's throats a bit during that story. So it's nice to see that come around in this movie. I think they did about as good a job as they could have done plot wise in terms of bringing Spock back, right? Giving us a reason for that and how it would work and how he would grow. Like, they were trying to make it work clearly. Okay, let's get Spock back to who he was. I think they did a pretty good job. It's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do, and it could have been completely silly and ridiculous, but I think it worked pretty well for me. Yeah, and overall, I think the story was respectful to the characters and to the story that had come before, not just Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, but the series itself. So I think a lot of that worked for me. And there was a cool moment which pointed out something that in writing circles is sometimes called a fate worse than death. Like, a lot of times a character at the end will have to do something extreme, because if they didn't, it's like they would have to live with his guilt or something like that, right? And they did that well on this with Kirk. He says, if I hadn't tried, the cost would have been my soul. I think that's such a good line that works for so many stories, right? There's like, these characters are put in this situation where it's like, this would be worse than dying for them, right? They'd have to live with this horrible thing around them, and that just encapsulated that so well for me. So yeah, overall, I think there's a lot of good stuff in the story. I think generally it works pretty well. I think it's a good continuation from Wrath of Khan, and for me, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it again. I hadn't seen it, I think, since it came out, so it was fun. It's fun to watch again. How about you? What's your take?
I also enjoyed this movie. I remember watching it in the theater as well, though I have seen it since then. And one of the things that I really enjoy specifically about this is how it's a continuation from, like you said, from Wrath of Khan. It's a continuation of the universe, but it also is an expansion of the universe in a very thoughtful way, where, for example, we get to see the Klingons, the new iteration of the Klingons, that makes them so much more interesting. And that's deeply enjoyable. But before I kind of go any further, I wanted to talk to you about something that you just said that sort of raised an interesting idea in my head. And I wanted to kind of get your feedback about this. You were saying how this movie wasn't like the Star Trek series where you had sort of like your reflective sci-fi story each week, and how the science fiction elements were reflective of what's going on in the world. And this was more character-driven story, even though what made the series good is how character-driven the stories were within the framework of that science fiction concepts. One of the things that I actually am not crazy about in this movie is the lack of sci-fi. But we can talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But I wanted to kind of examine, and this is where I'm not sure that this theory is going to hold up. So I'm going to throw this out here, and then maybe it'll crumble like a sandcastle. But that the movies that worked were the character-driven movies, and the movies that didn't work were the sci-fi driven movies. What do we think about that theory in the Star Trek universe?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Yeah.
Because you have like the first movie was definitely a sci-fi driven movie.
Yeah.
And then the second movie was a character.
Felt like it could have been an episode, not a full length.
Yeah.
movie.
And the second movie was definitely character.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no sci-fi whatsoever except the fact that it took place in space and you had your genetically enhanced people.
Yeah, and the existing, all the existing world building stuff of the ships and transporters and the planet and things like that. Yeah.
Then the third one was very character driven.
Yeah.
The fourth one had a little bit more of a sci-fi leaning with the space whales spaceship, but still, that was a very character-driven story. The bulk of that story was character. Yeah. The fifth one, we don't even talk about the fifth one. Just don't even. But we'll go ahead and label that one sci-fi. The sixth one, character. The seventh one, character-driven. That was Generations. Eighth one, a little bit more sci-fi. I like the eighth one. A lot of people don't like the eighth one. That's Insurrection.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like that. I like that one. I think that one's interesting. And then the ninth one is, I don't know, is that one more sci-fi? I've only seen that one once because we've got the Borg. Where's the Borg one?
I don't remember which one that was.
Yeah, the Borg one, First Contact, that's a good one.
Yeah, First Contact is cool.
So interesting. Anyway, I don't know if that theory holds up or not. But I do think that you're exactly correct in noting that this is a move away from science fiction-y storytelling and into more character-driven storytelling. And I think it actually is literally pushed in that direction by the destruction of the Enterprise. Because throughout the series, the voiceover was, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. And then the Enterprise is destroyed. And it's no longer the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. It is the adventures of this crew.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think there's anything really else to say about this story, except that it is a good story. It's a solid story. It's a story of friendship. And like you said, of what it means to sacrifice for friendship. And what would happen if you don't sacrifice for friendship. And I think those are really fabulous themes that we can talk about when we get to themes that are well portrayed in this movie. Yeah,
I agree.
So let's talk about anything we might have changed as a writer.
Okay. I struggled with this one because I think it generally works. I think this story is fairly straightforward. One thing, and maybe this would be a good thing to discuss since you brought up the Klingons and how they're fitting into here. I wasn't sure I really bought the motivation for Doc Brown. I don't know. I forget his character. But I could not see
Korg?
Doc
No,
Brown.
what was his name?
I
Korg?
forget. Something like that. Something like Korg or something. I forget. But it seemed like he was operating independently of the Klingon Empire. So, like, I was expecting more of a significant personal motivation. But if he was working for the Empire, I wanted to know more about what was going on and why he was on this mission. So I
Yeah.
would have strengthened his connection to the story one way or the other. Either he was on a mission for the Empire, and what was that mission? Whether it was the Empire failing, and this was their chance to have a weapon and change the balance of power, or if it was a personal thing, what was his motivation? Why? Give me something to work with there. And if it was the Klingon
Yeah.
Empire, like that would leave a thread open for the future, which obviously we know the Klingons come back in a future movie. So that could have tied in better. So yeah, I wanted more connection for this Klingon to be there in this story, because it seemed a bit like a plot device. Like, oh, we're going to get to these guys to there. We need to have a conflict. We want to have his son die. Like, it
Yeah.
seemed like a
Yeah.
writerly thing versus a natural story flow. So that was probably the biggest thing I felt. Like you said, maybe some more science fiction, but it was kind of coming off of Wrath of Khan with the Genesis, so that didn't bother me too much. And it was the Spock's magical power of the week. And then something else I thought of, which I don't know if I would have changed this, but at the end of the story, there was no repercussions to their actions with respect to their careers, right? Obviously, they get into that more in the next movie, but it did to me seem conspicuously absent in this movie, given like they're setting this whole thing up. Like, they're basically going rogue. I mean, they're committing some serious crimes doing this, and it's completely unaddressed at the end of the movie. I would have liked to have seen, even if it was just one line where one of them makes some kind of joke about what they were going to be facing when they came back, just to acknowledge it. So right now it's just like completely unaddressed. So just something simple would have at least pointed out that they were aware, right? And they knew something was going to come. So those are the things that I noticed. What about you? Is there anything that you would have improved?
I think your point about the motivation of the Klingon is really well taken. I know that I was confused by what he was doing there. If he already got all of the data and materials that were stolen by Valkyrie, his girlfriend, before he killed her, what did he need to go to Genesis for? What do you gain by going to the planet if you're looking for the specifications and technological specifications for the weapon? He got them. So that, I think, now maybe he didn't, but that wasn't made clear, right? Because he did later say, then we'll take Genesis from their own data banks. And I was thinking, didn't you already get that? So it wasn't clear what he was looking for. It wasn't clear what he got, and it wasn't clear what he still needed. And so I think that goes to what you were saying as far as his motivation is concerned, because I think you could have gotten a little bit more dialogue to clarify both what he was missing and why he was there, what the goal was.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you're right. If they had that information, it feels like there was something that was cut out of the script. Now that you mention it, like,
Oh, okay, all right, that makes sense.
they're like, oh, we need to, go and see if there's, remnants of this device or something, and they just cut it out. Maybe, I don't know. It kind of feels like that way.
Yeah, so that was, I think, well taken on your part as far as like that particular issue. I also have always had an issue with killing David. I don't know. It just always felt gratuitous to me. And I guess it was supposed to show that, they were the bad guys, and how dangerous this whole process. I think it would have been more impactful for David to have died because of his planet. As sort of like a consequence of his using proto-matter to create the Genesis weapon. And that was, that consequence was that. I think that would have been much more impactful. I
Oh,
don't know.
that's another interesting point, and now that you bring it up, I wonder if they didn't put that specifically in there, have Kirk react so negatively to the Klingons in a future movie, which does happen.
It
If they were
does. You're absolutely
like
correct. It's in
maybe they were
yeah.
setting that up here, even though they didn't use it in the next movie, the one after that they did. Yeah,
I
interesting.
think
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you though, actually.
and I think also we missed out on an opportunity for Kirk to continue to have disagreements with his son. I mean, that whole sometimes Star Trek and this is not uncommon with science fiction and that's okay. But sometimes Star Trek resolves interpersonal conflicts very quickly and neatly, more neatly than interpersonal conflicts are frequently resolved.
Yeah. Yeah,
But be
that's
that as it
true.
may, yeah. I think the other thing that I found distracting was there was the scene where McCoy goes into a bar, and to me, and I think, and that may be just now, however many years it's been, decades it's been since this movie came out, and the culture that this movie came out within, the bar felt too earthy to me.
Yeah, I could see that.
It just felt like too, I don't know, earthy. I was taken out of the sci-fi universe with that. Now, is that a big deal? No, it's a small thing, but it was just something I didn't make note of that it took me out of the world because it was too grounding, too grounding. I think it's important to ground people when you're in a sci-fi world. You can't make your sci-fi world too bizarre, otherwise people will feel lost in it. But then if you ground it too much, then it's not the other world that you're trying to enjoy when you're consuming this kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's too picky.
Yeah, I think there are levels of things that we see maybe could be improved, right? There's a little stuff, and
Yeah.
then, you know, you let those things go, and then the bigger issues where you're like, "Yeah, that thing really pulled me out," or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's fine to acknowledge the different aspects, however small they might be.
So let's talk about theme. What themes did you pull from this movie?
Yeah, the theme I got was sometimes loyalty to a friend leads the needs of the one to be powerful enough to risk the welfare of the many.
Nice.
I
Nice.
mean, it basically comes from the movie
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I came up with something very similar, which is friendship is worth sacrificing for.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. So as a writer, what do you take away from Star Trek 3?
I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating every time we come upon a sequel like this. And it seems obvious, but when you're doing a sequel, be respectful of the stories and characters that have come before. And I think this did that pretty well. And I think it works for me, at least. I think that's such an important thing because a lot of times we see sequels and it's not really respectful of what came before. I don't know if the writer's trying to do their own thing or if they didn't really get what made the first thing special or what. But yeah, to me, that's important. So always good to keep in mind.
That's a good one. And I think for me, what I take away from this is what I think this movie did well, which was to expand the universe while continuing the story. And that goes to what you said about respecting what came before. So it was a continuation of the story that came before, and it was like a pushing forward and then opening up, almost like a funnel, right? You push forward and you widen the universe, and I think it did
Yeah.
a really good job of that.
Yeah, that's a good note. I like that. Thank you for joining us today as we talked about Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Huge thanks to our Patreon supporters and all our listeners. Your support, even if it's just a like and a share, means the world to us. If you enjoyed today's themes, here are some further readings. Check out E.W. Barnes' Temporal Protection Corps series. It delves into time travel with heart, where duty to history meets personal stakes. Links are in the show notes if you're curious to explore.
The Stories Told podcast is available on multiple podcast platforms. Please like, subscribe, or follow, depending on where you're listening. It will help us reach more story lovers like you. For book, TV, and movie suggestions, drop a note on the YouTube channel, and that link is in the show notes as well. You can find Michael Grayford at michaelgrayford.com and ewbarnes at 1000years.com. Join us next time as we talk about the story told in the movie Night at the Museum. Thanks so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.